I've always found it very strange that people celebrate like the first 100 days in power. It's a very American thing to do, but I understand. Politically, of course, and even, for propaganda purposes or marketing purposes, it's a big sort of milestone. This is what we did in our first 100 days. Aren't we looking good? And we are coming up, well, we have just passed actually the first 100 days for Durham Council and, of course, Kent. Now, these two councils in particular, very, very, very much so, point to two councils where they are pretty much in full control. They have a majority on those two councils. And in particular, we'll get on to Kent next time in our what happened in Kent in their 100 days. But today we're going to look at Durham because Durham in particular is sort of, if Kent is sort of the jewel of Reform's southern crown, then surely Durham must be the northern jewel of that crown. Not really too much. Farage himself has seemed to give a lot of attention to Kent in particular. Kind of strange on that. And there are interesting rumours indeed, that Farage might be at the next election contemplating a switch from his current seat in Clacton to somewhere down south. After all, if you've seen all of the recent videos, a lot of his constituents aren't very happy with him at all. And well, if you're standing at the next election, why face those constituents where you can, sneakily switch to one down south? So we'll see if that happens. But like I say, next election, long way off. But interesting, maybe pin to note for the future. But anyway, what has been going on in the first 100 days of Reform's control of County Durham? So before we do get into this, please do click on the like, the share button, the links down below, the Patreon page, the Buy Me a Coffee link, the YouTube thank you button, and of course, as always, there is the YouTube membership button as well. So let us crack on then into this. So Reform's first 100 days in power in County Durham. So the colour of County Durham politics is going to look very different. Nigel Farage ambitiously predicted on the first ever of several visits earlier this year, as Reform UK set its sights on now trying to shake up the political landscape. The party's growing popularity in the region was, of course, proof that Reform was parking its tanks on Labour's lawn and was ready now to take control of Durham County Council, the national leaders said. Politically, of course, County Durham has changed dramatically over the past 6 years. The collapse of the Red Wall in 2019 contributed to Labour's loss in the 2021 local elections, meaning that the party lost overall control of the authority for the first time in 100 years and led to a new coalition of political parties in power. And although Reform had set its sights on a political upset earlier this year, even the national leader, Farage, admitted that winning 65 out of the 98 seats was a surprise, a symbolic victory he later dubbed a turquoise wave. So, after the party's first 100 days in power, what have we actually learnt about how they want to run the authority? And don't worry, at some point soon, I want to cover the scrutiny committee that took place in Durham. Oh boy, are we going to have some fun when that happens. So, alongside, of course, of some significant major changes, the words and, of course, actions of senior members have now set the tone for Reform's time at the helm. The party's strength in numbers was, of course, very clear to see as its councillors lined up outside Durham County Hall for the first council meeting back in May, with its numbers prompting using the electoral success to prove that they have an advantage by trying to alienate the future direction, ailing future direction of the council with the party's priorities. On his very first day in power, Councillor Husband vowed to prioritise common sense policies. As he spoke, the need to be transparent with the public and a plan to do things differently. If you've seen what happened on the scrutiny committee, very interesting comment indeed. The cabinet roles were, of course, then renamed to remove any references to climate change and equality and inclusion. Since then, the party's first moves in power have included the controversial decision to scrap the council's climate emergency pledge, believed to be the first of its kind in the UK, a warning now on a war on diversity training and programs. A County Durham care emergency was then instead launched, which Reform said would help to recognise the critical and essential crisis in children's social care, including special needs education and disabilities. Darren Grimes, the deputy council and leader and the party spokesperson, told the councils, "We are done with the expensive virtue signalling tripe and care about our residents." When all they've done is do their own virtue signalling, because if you've got this crisis in SEND education, what are they doing differently? What programs are they doing? Are they changing any funding? Are they moving things about? What are they exactly doing? That is, again, still not clear, because, again, there's still no policy coming forward. 100 days in power and still no policy. So, elsewhere, of course, new rules have been introduced to make it more difficult for landlords to convert housing into shared accommodation following concerns from residents on the campaign trail. Another sign, of course, that the council's net zero ambitions have been sidelined are the decisions now to refuse planning permissions for solar farms and choosing not to upgrade the electric vehicle fleet, which has been praised by members. So, basically, blocking all planning permission for solar farms. That's not good. That's not good at all, particularly if this might be a government project. That'll be interesting on that one. Andrew Hudson, the council leader, had said that some councils, of course, might spend their first 100 days commissioning diversity audits and renaming streets. I don't think that has ever really happened. I don't think that is really a council's ultimate priority at the moment, doing diversity audits and renaming streets, although I think he would give examples. Here in Durham, we have now been trying to busy do something truly radical, listening to people who actually pay the bills. However, opposition councillors, including from those from the Lib Dems to Labour and even independents, have been very much steadfast in their scrutiny and criticism of the administration, with members now repeatedly clashing in the council chamber over fractious debates and votes. A proposed change to, of course, the council tax reduction scheme program, requiring people on lower incomes to fund council services, has been tabled to raise much needed funding for the cash scrap services. But political rivals have warned that now thousands of vulnerable residents could be impacted. Again, Reform, Party of the People. Tell you what, we're just going to get rid of this council tax reduction scheme for people on low incomes. Yeah, good direction to go in there, guys. Decisions, of course, such as cutting the climate change pledge, then saw hundreds of protests gather outside County Hall with placards, even banners. Removing the pride flag and the Ukrainian flags have also caused condemnation amongst political rivals. At July's full council meeting, Reform's Kennedy Hope accused the Liberal Democrats of being in favour of adult and child slave labour. What? Anyway, the party then also recently claimed that council staff have now considered leaving their roles and even retiring early. So, yeah, we covered that it was going to cause huge problems later on down the line. Not an immediate problem, of course, but why would you go to work for a reform council? They are going to eventually run into recruitment problems. Not immediately, Not immediately, but eventually that will be quite a significant challenge they have to try and do. No one wants to work for a reform council. These, of course, came after comments from Nigel Farage that anyone working on climate change or diversity needs now to be seeking alternative careers. Reform was, of course, told that its rhetoric was, of course, very overblown and then alienated hundreds of workers performing key day-to-day services. Independent councillor John Shuttleworth said, "Our workers do a good job to the very best of their ability and have always done so. I work well with, of course, all these people, and I'm not prepared for them to be to be shat on like that." I'm guessing saying. Keen on now keeping a very close eye on these operations, a National Reform Watch Scrutiny Board has now been chaired by former council leader Amanda Hopgood. A by-election, of course, defeat at the Burnsfield ward, following now the prominent resignation of a councillor just days after being elected, of course, increased the number of Lib Dem representatives. But reform's now large majority means that pretty much every council scrutiny and committee board is now chaired by a Reform councillor, causing the opposition members to claim the new administration will now effectively be marking its own homework. And oh boy, is that true. We will be at some point watching that scrutiny committee. Ooh, it's fun. And yet, of course, Reform also pledged to scrutinise the local authorities' spending and performance through its own efficiency team, taking inspiration from the Doge programme, a body that, of course, will be tasked with reviewing council spending and service delivery. Council staff, of course, remain very much in the dark as to when or will this will arrive at County Hall. Council husband wanted to add, "We've put a stop to pointless vanity projects and are redirecting every penny to frontline services and our communities that depend on. It is called respecting the taxpayer, a concept that we're bringing back with a vengeance, by also making those who are on low income or in vulnerable situations now having to pay full council tax." Mm. Council meetings and, of course, committees will, of course, spark back into life in September, ahead now of key autumn and winter periods, where Reform is, of course, expected to continue to introduce its council and cost-cutting program in line with its priorities, amid the reports that initial £31 million worth of spending will be needed to be made a year. All eyes will be on the administration's first budget. And that is, I've said before, that first budget is going to be very interesting. Very interesting indeed when that starts to happen. But that's their first 100 days. The reality is it's not been going well in Durham. And as I've said before, we've got a big number of council elections next year. And if you want to know what you might be letting yourselves into, well, I've got a load of videos on my channel that will show you just the fun you could be in for if you suddenly find yourself with a Reform council. I have to say it's not going to be good, to be honest, by the looks of it. So far, they have been a wail and a wall of absolute incompetence. But I think, as I've said before, I think the worst is still to come. I think the worst is still to come from a lot of these councils. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.